But it turns out that I'm not even close to significant. I'm in the large majority. Some sources I've read estimate that 80% of the Western world lives with at least one parasite. Mental health aspects started to improve, and I was like, that's when I started to see the connection between gut health and mental health. On the second day, I passed a stool that looked heavily infested with various white worms of things. Disgusting.
Welcome to the Staniers. I'm Katherine. You can call me Kate.
And I'm Joshua. Call me Joshua.
This video is going to be an interview style where I ask Joshua questions about an issue he's been facing for the past several years. We hope that with this video we can inform you about what's been going on in our lives and offer you solutions if you're experiencing similar symptoms in your life. Today we're talking about gut parasites and autoimmune disorders. Before we begin, I just want to say, Joshua, thank you for being brave and wanting to talk about this story. It's not easy to talk about your health publicly, and I think it's very courageous that you are doing so. All right, let's begin. To give some context, Joshua has been experiencing autoimmune disorders for the past decade in the forms of alopecia and psoriasis. When I met Joshua several years ago, he was experiencing these autoimmune disorders, but I didn't take too much notice to them. As our relationship grew, I became more curious about the symptoms that Joshua was experiencing and encouraged him to look into what was happening with his body. So Joshua, why are you sharing this story now?
I think I've got to a good point in my health, and I've noticed a lot of significant benefits to improving my health, and it feels like a solution to a problem I've been trying to solve for a long time, and that problem being, how to help people live a more fruitful life, a more well-balanced life, a more enjoyable life. I've been on that train for a lot of years in that industry, and I never realized how much of an impact health would have on that mission. So since clearing my health up over these last couple of years and having a, extensive health history of complications and various things that I'm sure we'll dive into, I have noticed a significant change and a significant improvement, and I want to share that with people because I think I've learned some things, some pretty shocking things actually along the way. And I want to share that with the people with the intention of helping them get in control of their health,
How do you end up with several parasites and autoimmune disorders?
This is the trickiest question of them all, for sure, because it's going to vary. And a big thing with all of these conditions is that the root cause is often hard to find, and that's why it's often ignored and covered up. And again, I don't want to share too much from different questions, but the root cause can be hard to find. For me specifically, I had to look back through my health history to try and find what had caused it. And I've had chemotherapy and radiotherapy, and I didn't know this, but throughout my research, both of those things, treatments, they basically strip your gut biome of all the healthy bacteria and essentially kill a lot of cells. That's how it works. That's how it kills the cancer. But I didn't really know that. So after that treatment, I didn't rebuild my gut biome at all because I wasn't aware of it as a concept. I didn't know that was a thing until very recently, in the last 2 years. So straight after I finished that, I then traveled the world extensively, went to pretty much every continent, a lot of potentially infected food, poor water sources, just general hygiene, travel lifestyle isn't the cleanest, and you're changing sources a lot. So I presume that that's how it happened for me. But what's been interesting over this investigative period is realizing that the amount of people that live with parasites, because when I got that news, I was like, obviously, I'm the one with parasites. It's not a cool thing to maybe entertain about yourself, and especially when it's so internal and so at home. It's like you're carrying those things around. It's a bit mad, really. But it turns out that I'm not even close to significant. I'm in the large majority. Some sources I've read estimate that 80% of the Western world lives with at least one parasite, and they have different functions. Not all are bad, so there's a lot that goes into that. But in terms of bad parasites, I've seen estimates up to 80%, but the moving average across a lot of different studies is about 52%. So half the world has a bad parasite living within them. And the reason for that is not everybody's had chemotherapy or radiotherapy. I think for me that just accelerated it. But it's the food that we're eating, and it's the life that we're living, and it's the conditions that we're exposed to. It favors parasites ultimately. A lot of food that we'll talk about getting on the no list is just available everywhere, and that's the food that parasites directly enjoy. So the cause is likely going to be like food, water, and then your health history will reveal that. Does that make sense?
That answers the question. And I appreciate you for diving into all the different ways at which these autoimmune disorders and parasites can manifest in people's lives, because there can be some mystery, but there are some knowns.
There are, and I want to make it clear right from the start that there isn't actually like an official 100% proven link between parasites and autoimmune disorders. Many doctors think that that is the case, especially if you have a poor gut biome, that it will naturally trigger your autoimmune system. But depending on who you speak to, that link isn't like rock solid. To me it is. To me it's very obvious, but to other people they don't believe that there is that much of a link. So I just wanted to get that out there before we dive further in.
Thank you for clarifying. So Joshua, how did you find out you had parasites?
It was part of the process for investigating my autoimmune disorders, and the main one that I can show this is alopecia, but I also have some psoriasis. You might not be able to see that. I used to have that when I was very young, like a teenager, which can be a hormonal thing, and that kind of cleared up. The alopecia has been going on and off for years, and I'd kind of got comfortable with it, really. It was just something that I was dealing with. And really the Western world, the doctors that I spoke to, nurses, healers, generally the consensus was, well, it's just a thing, here's a cream, it's just a thing, here's a tablet or a injection, some way to like lessen the impact. And it wasn't until really I started to dive into the holistic world where there was the opportunity to think I could get to the root cause and stop it from happening, and Kate really helped me with that. So in terms of investigating that, one of the tests that our doctor recommended taking was a stool test. They basically send a bag of my poo to North Carolina, and then they test it and send it back. It's mad. But so we did that, and then that was like on the journey to figuring it out, and that just showed very clearly I had what's called an overgrowth dysbiosis, which basically is like I was a little bit clogged up, and then that encourages parasites, bad bacteria to kind of like accumulate. It's kind of like a toilet that's not flushing properly. It attracts the wrong things. So that's how we found it.
We shipped our shit, and it told him he had parasites.
Yeah.
It's a really surreal thing to experience, being in the home with Joshua and having to learn this information and then be like, what do we do about it? I want to add some context to this comfortability and the normalization that you felt around your autoimmune disorders, because I think with the opinions of science, so many varied opinions, that normalization and comfortability can come about because it's that feeling of, what do I do about it really? If everyone's telling me, it's normal, just deal with it. So how did you feel when you were losing your hair?
It kind of felt like a karmic thing, actually, for a long time, because when I had chemotherapy, I didn't lose all of my hair. It only just started to fall out, and then the treatment finished. So for many years, I thought it was like a karma thing. And then also one of the theories from my doctor was that it was like my body exhibiting delayed stress response from having chemotherapy. So for the first, say, 5 years, that was just what my accepted rubric or accepted reasoning for it was. When it first came back, and I remember because I was supposed to be speaking on stage in front of like a few hundred people, just this one patch at the back, and I just remember it just annoying. Autoimmune disorders just feel annoying because they're just, you don't feel like you're doing anything. It's not like if you eat loads of unhealthy food, you're going to put weight on it. You've got the outcome of the action and the behavior, but autoimmune disorders, it's not always obvious what's causing it. So it was annoying, and then it over time is something I have been very self-conscious of. Not so much in public. It's really strange actually, because when I'm out and about with people, it doesn't bother me like in person what people think. It really doesn't. But when I see myself, and obviously we do content like this, when I see myself on camera for like a lot of years, it's been very difficult to look at myself, and I always think like, oh, why would anybody listen to this guy? I don't look well. A lot of stuff's gone into that. It's been very challenging, and over time that just got, I guess, progressively worse to where I just didn't want to be on camera. And then I grew my hair out really long, even though I had the patches, as kind of like an acceptance of it. I thought that's just what my life was going to be.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it makes a lot of people feel understood who are experiencing these symptoms, and seeing you and how you would respond to yourself on camera, it really hurt my heart. And that's why I pushed us to find solutions for these symptoms. And thank you for sharing more about how you feel about your alopecia. But what about the psoriasis?
Similar story, really. It's not as bad anymore. I had that a lot worse when I was a kid. Used to have it on this elbow, and again, I used to be so self-conscious of it. When I used to go to school, I'd always try and wear long sleeves. I hated having it out. It felt just like an eyesore, and I didn't want anybody to look at it. And that went on for a lot of years. That was really challenging. But the same sort of thing always just felt like, why do I have this? What's causing this? And psoriasis is so common. I don't know the percentages, but it's very common. And again, it's just sort of like accepted. Oh, you've just got it. That's just is what it is.
Yeah, and take this medication for it. I see a lot of infomercials. Yeah. Thank you for sharing more about how you felt about your psoriasis as well. It's difficult to hear how these things have caused you pain for so many years without solutions being offered to you. So you've already touched on this a bit, but was it easy to get help and direction for what you were experiencing?
Absolutely not. I feel like most people think I'm a quack for the way that I've gone about this time, because I'd say 95% of doctors, people that I spoke to, just point blanket statement of it just can't be healed, just is what it is. Even the parasite thing, like the Western approach, the accepted treatment, it just doesn't have efficacy. Like, they've shown it loads. What the suggestion is that you take a very strong course of antibiotics, but the problem with that is that, yeah, it might kill the parasite, but it doesn't kill the eggs that have been buried deep into your what's called biofilm. It doesn't get rid of that, so you get rid of them for a short time, but then they come back, and they often come back stronger, and the antibiotics itself damages your gut biome. So there was very little help. And with the psoriasis, that's like, I was going to the doctor for that for like 5 years or something, with no solution, just different creams, this and that, like, oh well, there's nothing.
Wow.
It's not like I was not doing something. I just wasn't given a solution. So when we made the link, or we'd got this test, and it was like the parasite thing, to get that solved, not really. And what I did notice is that there's a thing in the holistic health world now, and maybe most people are unaware, and they always talk about like how mainstream medicine is, not cheap, and it's definitely not cheap in America. But some holistic doctors do charge a lot. Like when we were looking, it was thousands of dollars up front, like multiple thousands of dollars for what is pretty much an inconclusive investigation, because they're just guessing just like I'm guessing. They're just got calculated guesses from previous anecdotal research, and I get that, and they do have experience. But I learned in this process that health has to be decentralized, and I have to be the one to take care of it. And that's been part of the big challenge, and Kate will probably touch on this later. That's been a big part of it, is me actually taking care of my own health and prioritizing it. But when I realised nobody was coming to save me, nobody was going to come and do this for me, it was actually quite liberating, because I was like, oh, well, I'll just figure this out. And I've learned so much about how my body works. And then in taking that leadership, now I've started to find help, people that are less, because before, how I saw health, and this is probably because I was born in England with the NHS, is that it's like, you out there, you have to look after me. I'm going to come and tell you my problems, and you're going to tell me how I'm going to get better, how I'm going to heal. Like, you're going to hold that information. But when I took that power back and realised it's for me to decide, then I started to attract people that wanted to support my journey, but weren't just going to tell me and look after me, do everything for me like previous. That's what healthcare was to me before. But now I'm taking care of my own health and figuring a lot out. Then the support is welcoming, because you're probably more receptive to support as well when you just have that ability to discern who you're going to listen to. Because I used to think, again, health was just these people know, and everybody else I don't have to listen to. Now how I see it is I take information in from multiple sources, and then discern which is going to apply for me, and then go from there and then test it. Do you see what I mean? Yeah,
and you're transitioning perfectly into our next question, which is, how did you start taking action on your own? So you've given us a broad description of what you did, research, talking with people, but what are specific treatments and actions that you took?
So yeah, as I said, the first step, it was a lot of research, and I was just looking at what a lot of other people had done, different protocols and supplements and, approaches, and a lot of it was just stopping things that I thought were not helping. That's usually a lot of what healthcare seems to be, is you just, because the human body, I believe, in its natural state is healthy. It doesn't want to, it's not sick. You often are doing things that make it sick, or you're exposed to something. So if you figure those out, and I was already eating pretty healthy at the time, I thought, but I cut out processed foods. I got rid of eggs, got rid of most meat. For a while I did eat meat, continue to eat meat because it was a tapering off period. Cut out dairy, and can you think of anything else that we cut out?
Coffee, most carbs.
Yeah, cut out coffee, most carbs, especially short chain carbs like, easy digested sugars, all of that stuff. Just cut all of that out.
Japanese sweet potatoes was the main carb of our
we stuck to
diet.
just Japanese sweet potatoes and just sweet potatoes for a while, and then we started to juice. We probably got the juice recipe maybe wrong at the start, but we started off with like a green juice, so we were doing cabbage, celery, and we started to take some pretty strong anti-parasite remedies, things like clove and black walnut and oregano oil. And we were just going at the parasites every morning, because the kind of the theory is for parasites is that in the morning when you're most empty, I imagine it as a car, as it's most empty, not worked, that's when the parasites will be around and most accessible. So in the morning when you've not got food in, you go at it with the strong medication, and the things I've just mentioned, they're all natural substances, but they're anti-parasitic. And then throughout the day, you only fill the system back up with foods that the parasites don't really want to eat. And then I also started to take something called biotox. And what this is, it's an enzyme that is designed to eat away at the biofilm within your intestines. And the biofilm, easiest way to describe it, is kind of like cling film that lives on your cell walls. And they believe, some research that shows that that's where the eggs and certain types of parasites live, in that tissue. So you take this enzyme and it eats away at it over time.
So you cut out a lot. You started taking more juicing, supplements, herbs. Did you see any changes with these initial treatments?
Yeah, I definitely lost the zest for life, and I lost a lot of weight. Our diet 180'd. We probably didn't eat enough we definitely weren't eating enough calories. But you started to get lethargic, and as I said, not really have a zest for life, and I didn't really enjoy it. But what I did start to notice after maybe 6 to 8 weeks, maybe a bit less than that, I started to notice that in the morning when I woke up, and this was what really, I guess, changed a lot in my paradigm, is that most mornings for the last however long I can remember, I wake up with this just immediate panic, right? And this immediate worry. And I'd been facing that for a long time, and I'd worked through it in one way. But as we started to do this cleanse and eat these different things, that started to dissolve a little bit. And I'd wake up and I'd be groggy and I'd be tired because we weren't eating enough. But that mental health aspect started to improve, and I was like, that's when I started to see the connection between gut health and mental health. And then that accelerated the tenacity towards healing.
The detox process in itself will make you tired too, though. Just want to say we weren't eating enough based on the physical activity that we were doing in our lifestyle, but it is also the detox that tires you out as well.
Die-off effects.
And the die-off effects for Joshua, I could see in person, where his psoriasis increased heavily around his eyes and on his body and in his head, and his hair actually started falling out more. So the treatments, although weren't very exciting and a bit difficult to do with this change in lifestyle, you did follow through with them. We did make some progress that we were like, okay, I feel like we've made a step forward. Would you say that your unenjoyment with the treatment process caused you to let go of it, fall off of it a bit?
Yeah, 100%, because it's really difficult to just keep doing it, and I think on reflection, I have no regrets as to falling off track or going off course or going back to normality a little bit, because I do think that you have to do this. I think you have to do this in waves, because it's challenging and your body's going through a lot. So yeah, we slowed down on especially the juicing, because it's a lot. They don't taste good.
The black walnut is horrible.
It's like you waking up, the first thing that you're doing in a day is taking a really not nice tasting drink that's super. You can tell it's anti-parasitic 'cause it's horrible. And then you're doing that and you're eating this restrictive diet, and it was challenging. And I'm glad that we kind of turned it off during the wedding time when my family came over, and then it took us a few weeks to get back on board. But yeah, it's something I would recommend doing in seasons.
So what made it kickstart again, your treatment?
We got to the new year, and I believe, did you find psoriasis or something that looked like psoriasis on your leg?
I had a rash that was developing and not going away on my calf and on my back, to the point where I was in panic because I heard that intestinal parasites could be passed through sexual activity, and I was not about it. I was like, I am not going to get psoriasis and autoimmune disorders. If this is still impacting your health, that means it could impact my health and the future of our family's health. We need to do something about this again.
Yeah. And I know that sounds a bit out there with the passing of it, but there is a lot of evidence that shows that even without that, like, as we interact with each other, our biomes interact and change and will mirror each other.
Yeah.
And they've shown there's loads of studies. We probably need to start linking studies, but there's a lot of studies that show that. So there is definitely a thing. This is why when you spend time with healthy people, generally you get healthier, and if you spend time with unhealthy people, you do get unhealthy. So even though that might seem out there, when I realized that is a possibility, I was back at the decision tree of like, well, am I going to say that, like, blame Kate and just be, oh, that's absolutely not true, that couldn't be a thing, and carry on doing, like 20% effort and intention, because it wasn't like I just went all the way back to unhealthy and started doing, crazy things, but I just wasn't as intentional day to day with the health thing. It had fallen off my priority list. So I was back at that decision tree. And for me, whenever I get there, it's never easy, and that was a difficult day, and we had a tough conversation about that, but I was like, all right, well, we're back on, and we're going to go back, and I went back through the same thing, research, figure out the next step, spoke to more doctors, and that brings us through to present day, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And I want to just, as an outside perspective seeing this process, I want to encourage any of those who struggle with treatments to know that if you're not enjoying your treatment and owning it for yourself, then it's going to be difficult to continue. Like, a lot of the time I found myself being like, Joshua, are we doing this? Are we doing this? And like asking him questions about it and wanting to promote the treatment, because I know it is difficult for him to continue. And I'm a wife, and so I'm persistent in them. But ultimately he would have, if he wasn't the one being like, oh, I'm going to take my supplements and I'm going to take these herbs and I'm going to follow this diet, taking autonomy with the treatment, then it wasn't going to happen. And after this discussion that we had, he was making the decision. Oh no. I felt like Joshua made the decision that he was going to own the treatment and make it his lifestyle and find out a way to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true.
So what is your solution in treatment now?
So as for diet, we're currently on a very high fruit, plant-based diet. And we were plant-based under the vegan category, both of us, a few years ago, and that didn't work out full-time. But in this journey of healing and connecting to people who are willing to entertain the idea of removing parasites, because there's a big body of people, I've already said many times, that don't believe that they can be gone, they don't want to deal with them, it's just move it over there. There's equally a lot of other doctors who it's their full-time thing to remove them. And the common thread amongst all of those doctors is that a plant-based diet predominantly is not what parasites enjoy. And as we've spoke about with the resistance challenge to actually doing the healing, this has been difficult. I've since going back to eating meat, I've really enjoyed it, especially eggs and cheese and all of these things. But there's only so many doctors that you can speak to that they're like, look, plant-based at least for a while. So we've been doing that in a high fruit version as well for slightly different reasons. So that's supposed to have more efficacy against parasites. But now that we're a few weeks into that, been really enjoying that. No processed food, no unnatural sugar, no obviously takeaways. So a big diet piece like that, drinking a lot of water. We've also been juicing. We do what's called a Kabbalah juice every day, which is carrots, apples, beets, lemons, apples, which is really nice. We've been eating a lot of fermented foods, and there's a guy near here that sells sauerkrauts and kimchis. That's the G. It's called Joe. Shout out to him.
Farmingforlife.com.
Get a link down in description. Really good stuff. We've also been taking a lot of probiotics, prebiotics, and different digestive enzymes. The design of that is to rebuild the good bacteria. As I said, I was like completely flipped, where I had a lot of bad bacteria and parasites and no good bacteria. So we started to add that in, and that's just a daily thing, you know, morning and night, just taking a probiotic tablet. And then a big piece of our protocol right now, and this is something that has come as really a blessing, it's called a full moon parasite cleanse. And the theory and the, I guess, methodology is that around the full moon, because of how the moon changes your serotonin levels, it stimulates more parasite activity. So around the time of the full moon is when the parasites are going to be, you know, most active and most exposed. So the idea is that around that time, you take a course of very strong anti-parasitic natural ingredients, kind of like before what we did, but on a more focused level, and you take that morning, night for 3 days around the full moon, and then you can up your doses as it gets stronger. And we'll leave the links below to within this, but within the formulas, there's things like Vidanga, clove, neem, black walnut husk, all
Perdica.
of these, and then mimosa perdica is another part of the stack. To summarize, our current treatment is a very healthy diet, high fruit, lots of water, limited amounts of caffeine and coffee. I have 1 a day, sometimes 2 if we're getting really out there, but that very rarely happens. No alcohol, and skin brushing.
Skin brushing.
We've been doing skin brushing and skin cleanses because your skin is your biggest organ, and it's a waste removal system. So I've also been doing lymph gland flushing, where you just move your lymphs around and make sure that your body is detoxing correctly. Very important.
Based on the way that Joshua's described these solutions, they've been a way better fit for him. It's more aligned. It's personalized. It feels like we're heading in a direction of solutions that work. So how has this treatment made you feel different?
It's given me every emotion, through disgust and worry to hope and faith. So, for example, that first full moon parasite cleanse we did, on the second day, I passed a stool that looked heavily infested with various white worms of things. It was disgusting. And I'm like, man, that's been in me. To see that go is like giving me so much more hope. And physically, I'd say I'm the strongest I've been. I've put on 22 pounds the last time I checked, and I'm maintaining a very solid weight now, which has been really big for me. My energy is way more stable. Kate knows I'm doing a lot of long days back to back without too much trouble, really any. I'm very testy. My testosterone feels very high, for sure. Kate will also attest to this, if you know what I'm saying. And just generally feel just good in myself. You know, my mental health, I haven't thought any suicidal thoughts for as long as I can remember. True suicidal thoughts, like the odd glimmer of something bad happening, but not sitting there and feeling it like I used to have, like last year. That was very unexplained. All of these mental health things I had were very unexplained. So since clearing up the parasites, the mental health has cleared up too. So it's been really healing, and I've really enjoyed it, to the point of where I'm like, what am I going to do in the world? And it's to hopefully help others, guide others through this process, because there's so much reward in it.
It's like, you know, my script, because I know the next question is, what are your future intentions based on all of that you've been through?
Expand awareness and talk about this openly, and share solutions actively with as many people as I can. Because I know loads of people, I've got close family friends that just have autoimmune disorders, and that's just it. That's just what they do. And it's like, well, there is maybe another way. And hopefully I just grow my hair back, because it's a big part of the puzzle to show that this has actually healed. And there is signs. It can be difficult to say when it's this, spread and this much, but there are signs of new areas of growth, which is great. And I just want to explore it more and speak to more people about how to improve your health. This fruit diet thing is very interesting. We're doing a fruit fast soon. Very interesting, because it's very different to what most of my network say about health. You know, the plant-based diet has kind of been vetoed a lot in mainstream, and the fruit diet gets nailed in the mainstream and in the Twitter streams too. But maybe just show a different side of the coin and show how, you know, I'm lifting heavier weights than ever. I'm just better than ever, really. So just share that and help give that to other people. And ultimately share the message of food being a medicine, because I really see it that way now, and I've never seen it so clear that the food that you take in is 100% and can 100% be a medicine. So having that mantra and living by it.
That has been a journey. I feel like we've been up and down and all over. Thank you, Joshua, for sharing this story with us. And I hope that this video can reach who it needs to reach so they can have this information and talk with you about it.
I would say as a final thing is that, like, I would move, and I've shared this with people before, is I would move and make moves as if you already have parasites. The stool test cost me $400, right? It was hard to get. It took time. And when it came back, what it actually showed is so inconclusive. It's not inconclusive. That's what you've got, but the treatments are pretty much going to always be the same. Anti-parasite, what we've already mentioned, is the treatments very, very rarely change for what exact parasite there is, and on a nuanced level. And the holistic doctors will be getting on me for that, because there's all different types, and of course that's true. But for just the average person in their day-to-day life, if you just do one of these cleanses, a couple of weeks, you will notice a significant difference. I don't know how you wouldn't. So if you just move as if you've got them, then they'll be gone before you even know if you had them. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I like to just follow the anti-parasitic lifestyle myself.
Yeah,
I feel better
good
on it, and I agree with you.
Yeah, and you deworm dogs, you deworm cats. It's time to deworm the human, I think. The age of the deworming.
Yes.
And I would just say to anybody out there that is struggling with autoimmune disorders that it's okay to start investigating for a root cause. And if there's people telling you that, like, you're mad and you're a quack and that isn't the way and that doesn't connect, take your health into your own hands and decentralize it. Because when I did that and took my power back, I literally took my power back. I was the one that started to heal me through that belief and intention of, like, I'm going to figure this out, and you can have that too, because you deserve to have that. You deserve to have your health. So I believe there's an option.
All right, well, we need to go play with the dog. Thank you so much for watching. We hope that you found this useful. Feel free to leave any questions in the comments. We'll respond to them as soon as possible. Much love.
Much love. Peace, peace. Say bye, Renson.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.